There comes a time in life when you realize that you no longer need to explain your decisions, justify yourself, or try to convince someone who decided long ago not to understand you. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes a real turning point, not just a set of wise-sounding theories, but a way of life. Because when you start practicing true self-control, when you stop reacting impulsively and instead choose to observe with awareness, everything changes. And that change unsettles certain people, especially those who have built their power on manipulating others. A narcissist, for example, cannot stand losing control. They feed off your reactions, your doubts, your need for approval. But when you break that cycle and stop giving them what they seek, when you choose silence not as a sign of weakness but as a mark of inner strength, it strikes them where it hurts the most. They rely on your insecurity to keep their game going, but if you step off the board, they lose their power. Many think Stoicism means being cold, but in reality, it means being clear. It's not about indifference, it's about focus. You don't detach from the world, you simply stop letting the world decide how you feel. And that scares people. Because most of them are running on autopilot, reacting to everything, seeking validation, shaping themselves to fit into places where they never truly belonged. But when you break free from that pattern, you become a threat. The strength of someone who has nothing to prove is unbearable to those who thrive on superficiality. When you stop being emotionally manipulable and understand that real freedom comes from not depending on external approval, everything starts to shift. And that bothers them. It bothers them because it proves that you can stand firm without becoming aggressive, earn respect without raising your voice, and that true power lies in knowing when not to react. A Stoic doesn't ignore pain. They understand it, observe it, accept it, and move forward. And that terrifies a narcissist, because they expect drama, chaos, emotional outbursts. They want to see you lose control, to see you justifying yourself, begging. But when instead you respond with serenity, when you give them presence instead of reaction, it's like taking away the oxygen they depend on. The most fascinating thing is that this strength doesn't need to be displayed. It's felt. When you change internally, the world notices. Your relationships shift. Your conversations change. You start attracting a different kind of energy because you're no longer operating from a place of lack. You're no longer seeking external validation because you've found something within yourself that no one can take away. Of course, some people won't like it. Some will say you've become distant, cold, arrogant. Let them talk. Those who enjoyed your suffering will be confused by your peace. Those who used guilt to manipulate you will feel powerless against your firmness. And all of this is a sign that you're on the right path. Because the silence of someone who has found themselves is louder than any justification. But this path requires courage. It's not easy to break old patterns, to stop pleasing everyone, to accept the risk of not being liked by all. However, this is where freedom begins. When you realize that your inner peace is worth more than any external approval, you stop sacrificing your mental well-being for the expectations of others. And then you understand. It wasn't the world that changed, it was you. And that internal shift reflects outward. People who once treated you as an option disappear because there's no longer room for their manipulation. Those who used to look down on you begin to respect you silently, even if they never admit it, because your presence speaks louder than words. Stoicism is not an escape. It's an encounter with yourself, with your essence, with what truly matters. It's stepping away from the noise of the world to finally hear your own voice. And once you find it, there's no going back. What once held you captive loses its power, because now you are the one setting the course. And the narcissist? Of course, they'll try to shake you. They'll use every tactic to provoke you, but you're no longer the same person. What once hurt you now teaches you. What once made you explode now gives you calm, because you've realized that the control they thought they had over you was just an illusion, a power you once gave them voluntarily. But now, everything has changed. Because now you know that true strength doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from mastering yourself. And that, my friend, is something no one can take from you. There comes a point when emotional silence is more powerful than any confrontation. You no longer need to explain, argue, or convince. The mere absence of reaction shakes the foundation of those who once fed on your vulnerability. And the Stoic mindset doesn't mean feeling superior to others. It means never placing yourself below your own peace. When someone who once had full access to your emotions realizes their words no longer affect you, they start to falter. Narcissists thrive on chaos, especially emotional chaos. They create drama, provoke, manipulate, and they expect a show. But when the show is canceled, when you refuse to play their game, it terrifies them. They realize that their power was just a chain that you have now broken. Your ability to remain calm when provoked, to hold your ground without exploding, is what begins to dismantle them. Not because you ignore the situation, but because you no longer give it the power to define you. You have disconnected your emotions from their control, and in that silence they feel the weight of their own emptiness. True inner strength doesn't make you loud, it makes you unshakable. You no longer seek validation. Your worth is no longer tied to being seen or heard by the wrong people. And that makes you unpredictable. And unpredictability, to a narcissist, is like a mirror they cannot manipulate. This stoic confidence is subtle, but undeniable. It doesn't need recognition to be real. It shows in the fact that you no longer react to passive aggression, that you no longer tolerate drama, that you protect your energy because now you know its value. And that infuriates them. It infuriates them that you have become immune to their game. Letting go is not weakness. It's understanding that you no longer have to fight battles that were never yours, that not every provocation deserves a response. Sometimes, the most powerful reaction is no reaction at all. And then you realize something. You never needed permission to be whole. You had simply forgotten how strong you are when you stopped defining yourself through the distorted lens of others. Now the mirror is yours. Clear, unfiltered, and finally, honest. There comes a moment when everything clicks. You realize that not reacting isn't weakness. It's mastery. It's self-control. The kind of control that can't be faked. And when someone who once manipulated your emotions is met with your silence, they freeze, because they no longer know how to handle what they can't control. That silence isn't punishment, it's protection. It's your shield, your refuge. Your sacred space where you guard your peace, your growth, your awakening. What most people don't understand is that stoic change doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of being burned so many times that you finally learn not to reach into the fire. You don't argue anymore. Not because you've surrendered, but because you've outgrown that phase. Because you understand that fighting in a place where truth doesn't matter is just draining yourself for nothing. And that transformation? It disarms the manipulator who thought they could always keep you in their game. There is no stronger response than becoming a completely different version of yourself. Narcissists remember exactly which emotional buttons to press. Every reaction, every tear, every plea, but now, they press those same buttons and nothing happens. No collapse, no explanation. Just silence. A silence that doesn't break, that stands firm, that echoes. For them, it's a cruel irony. The drama that fed them no longer exists. The emotional performances are over. The kitchen is closed. You no longer serve reactions, and they hate it. Not because they care about you, but because they can no longer manipulate you. They've lost access, so they start trying harder. Not out of love, but because the emptiness of losing control devours them. They don't want you. They want access to your energy, your attention, your doubts, but you've shut the door. And now all they can do is stand outside, knocking on an entrance that will never open again. You discover a strange peace in no longer needing closure. You don't chase apologies or explanations that were never going to come. You create your own clarity, in silence, in your own way. This kind of healing is private, but its impact is public. It changes how you enter rooms, how you speak, how you move, with certainty, without hesitation. And when they see you again, calm, steady, unshaken, they break. Because what they couldn't destroy, they also couldn't keep. And now, the very thing they underestimated stands before them. Strong, whole. You weren't weak. You were loyal. But now you are wise. And wisdom is the one thing that can't be faked, stolen, or copied. You realize that peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the absence of need. You no longer need their approval, their attention, their chaos. And in that moment, you win. In a way that isn't posted, explained, or proven. You win when they can't reach you. When you choose peace every time you're invited to conflict. Even your no carries a different weight now. It's firm, final, without the need for explanation. You don't ask permission to protect your mind. You simply do it. And that decision, that courage to walk away, to remain silent, to set boundaries, is exactly what they never expected. They counted on your pain, your fears, your old patterns. They never thought you'd become someone who values peace more than people, especially those who thrived on your suffering. But now, they see it. They feel the distance. And the truth? They always knew this version of you was possible. That's why they work so hard to suppress it. This kind of strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It lives in your decisions, your discipline, your refusal to return to cycles you've already healed from. This isn't about revenge. It's about release. You're not trying to teach them a lesson. You've simply finished learning yours. And maybe they'll talk. Maybe they'll say your silence is arrogance, that you've become cold. Let them. You no longer carry the burden of being misunderstood. You carry your peace, your clarity, and that is all that matters. Healing doesn't come with applause. No one congratulates you for stopping the bleeding for people who never brought you a cure. But in that silence, in that private reconstruction, something unbreakable is born. And it shows. Not in what you say, but in how you stop chasing what has already proven it doesn't want to be caught. They never thought you'd get tired. They were so sure you'd always come back. One more excuse. One more explanation. Another chance. But that version of you no longer exists. Not out of hate, but because you finally love yourself enough to walk away from what drains you. And that terrifies them more than any anger ever could. When someone loses the version of you that tolerated their chaos, they enter their own personal hell. In panic, desperately searching for cracks to slip through. But those cracks are now sealed, reinforced with boundaries, protected by self-respect. They can't enter where there's no entrance left. Now they try kindness, sweet words, even apologies they swore they'd never say. But look closely. Is it growth or strategy? Because change without consistency is just manipulation in disguise, and you no longer fall for empty words. What hurts them most isn't your absence. It's that now you see them clearly. The smoke they wrapped you in has lifted. And once you see someone for who they truly are, you can't unsee it. You can forgive, yes, but blind loyalty? That never returns. This journey makes you different, wiser, sharper, calmer, not cold, but calculated. You no longer waste energy. You don't explain yourself where there's no respect. You don't ask where there's no effort. And this version of you is the one they always feared. They weren't afraid of losing you. They were afraid that you'd realize you never needed them. That's the truth no one says out loud. Because if you had known your strength from the start, their games wouldn't have lasted so long. But now you do, and there's no going back. At first, peace feels strange, like the silence after years of noise. But then, it grows inside you. It reflects in your choices, in your routines. You no longer fight to be seen. You just live. And that is unbearable to someone who once believed they could control you. There's a quiet confidence in no longer reacting, not pretending, not ignoring, just genuinely being unaffected. You've detached, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And that distance is now your shield. They'll say you've changed, that you're not the same. And they're right. You're not. You've evolved. And evolution doesn't ask for permission. It happens when survival demands growth. And now, you move forward, without anger, without resentment, just understanding. You needed that version of them to become this version of you. And now that you're here, you're never going back. Your peace is waiting. Your new life begins. They don't miss you. They miss the version of you that was useful to them. The one who explained every silence, justified every reaction, and stayed even when it hurt. That version was easy to manipulate, but it no longer exists. It was buried beneath every night you rebuilt yourself alone, in every tear you wiped away without anyone noticing. Now you understand. You never asked for too much. You just asked the wrong person. And that truth stings. Not because you're still bleeding, but because you now see it with brutal clarity. You gave everything to someone who only knew how to take. And now that you've stopped giving, they feel empty. But that emptiness was never your responsibility. You're not seeking revenge. That's not what healing brought you. You seek distance, peace, stability. You want quiet mornings where you don't wake up with anxiety. Peaceful nights where no one criticizes your tone, your choices, or your silence. You want your life back. And now, you have it. They will try to return. Not because they miss you, but because access means control. Without access, they can't manipulate your emotions. But you change the locks. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. You learned that forgiveness does not mean placing someone back in the position they once abused. It's funny how, at first, the silence of peace feels unfamiliar. You question it, you test it, you may even sabotage it, because you were taught that love always hurts, that connection comes with drama. But now you are unlearning everything, and it begins with this truth. Real love will never ask you to make yourself small. Today your silence speaks louder than your words, but it's not the silence of repression, it's the silence of strength. The kind that says, I don't need to explain myself to someone who has already decided not to understand me. You are no longer available for conversations that lead nowhere. You've walked away from the chaos. And here's the truth. They always knew this day could come. They saw your strength long before you did. That's why they invested so much in confusing you, making you feel guilty, keeping you small. But real strength doesn't stay hidden forever. It waits, patiently, until the moment you finally say, enough. That enough changes everything. It shifts the energy in every room you enter. You no longer walk with your head down. You no longer apologize for existing. You no longer try to fit into places that were never meant for you. You walk in truth. At last. And with that truth comes clarity. Clarity about who you are, what you deserve, and what you will never tolerate again. That's what they didn't see coming. They thought if they broke you enough, you would stay broken, but they underestimated the power of your healing. Today, peace is as essential as air. You protect it. You choose it. You defend it, even if it means being alone. Because being alone in peace is 1,000 times better than being surrounded by chaos. And once you taste that inner silence, nothing noisy ever tempts you again. You no longer explain your distance. You simply walk away. You don't beg to be heard. You speak when it matters. You don't need to be understood by those who refuse to see you. Your presence is no longer a concession. It's a privilege. And if it's not honored, it's withdrawn. This is your new version. Not colder, just wiser. Not harder, just clearer. And this version no longer settles for crumbs. Not for half-hearted love. Not for temporary fixes. Because you've learned, sometimes through pain, that the only person who can truly save you is yourself. There's something unsettling about someone who no longer seeks validation. It shakes those who built an entire dynamic around your insecurities. The day you stop asking, explaining, waiting, That's the day your power becomes undeniable. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm. You didn't become cold. You became aware. You finally understood that some people never truly loved you. They loved the version of you that served them. They never really saw you. They just used you. But now the energy you once poured into others you redirect toward yourself. What you once spent fixing others, you now use to build your own path. And they feel it. The emptiness left by your emotional absence hurts more than any confrontation. They don't just miss your presence, they miss the power they had when you still doubted yourself. Now that you walk with certainty, there's nothing left for them to hold on to. You used to feel guilty for saying no, for stepping away, for setting boundaries. But now you know. Self-love sometimes looks like silence, like blocking, like unfollowing, like walking away mid-conversation. Not to hurt, but to protect. You finally stopped betraying your peace just to please others. And what once broke you, now strengthens you. The same patterns, the same tactics, the same manipulative cycles, they no longer pull you in. You recognize them instantly, like the smoke from a fire you once escaped. And this time, you don't stay to burn again. You no longer romanticize potential. That change transformed everything. You don't fall for what someone could be. You focus on what they show you, always. You've learned that instability is also a choice. And someone who constantly confuses you does not deserve clarity from you. Now your love is different. It's not given out of fear or loneliness. It has intention, it has standards, it has requirements, not walls, but doors. And only those who arrive with respect, with truth, with commitment, only they are allowed in. This change wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And they notice, especially the narcissist, because control stops working when you stop fearing the loss of people. That is your new strength, your distance from dysfunction. You no longer chase what drains you. You no longer argue with what confuses you. You observe, you decide, and you leave. No drama, no noise, just action. There is a quiet freedom in no longer letting things affect you. You still feel, you still care, but you no longer fall apart. You breathe, you pause, you think. That pause used to feel like guilt. Today, it feels like peace. You no longer try to fix what broke you, simply leave it behind. Not with resentment, just with closure. And you've learned that closure is not something they give you. It's something you create, in silence, without their participation. They had access to the most fragile version of you, and they still destroyed it. But that version no longer exists, and the one that replaced it no longer chases, no longer justifies, no longer plays the game. The new version builds, and it builds in silence. Stop searching for signs. That's one of the biggest changes. You no longer wait for the universe to confirm what you already feel inside. You simply listen to your body, to your energy, to that tightness in your chest that appears when something isn't right. That is your answer now. Excuses don't work on you anymore, nor does anyone's charm. They used to play with your hope. They twisted your loyalty until it became theirs. But now, you don't expect them to change. You don't expect anything at all. And in that emptiness, a space finally opens, one just for you, whole, honest, without illusions. Narcissists follow patterns, the same words, the same traps, the same cycle. They rely on your short memory and your soft heart. But you've walked through that hell long enough to see the trap before you step into it. You no longer mistake pain for love, and that clarity changes everything. You no longer fear distance. You no longer feel the need to stay with broken people to feel whole. You found your completeness in silence, in calm, in that quiet certainty that some connections were never ties, they were chains. Letting go no longer hurts the way it used to. Now it feels like freedom. They're still watching, waiting for a crack in your peace, waiting for you to make a mistake, to break the silence. But you've made peace your foundation. You no longer act, you no longer react. And that serenity, that unshakable calm, drives them insane. This version of you does not beg, does not chase, does not justify itself to those who never truly listened, even when you were screaming with your soul. Now you speak differently, with your absence, with your boundaries, with that firm way of choosing yourself, even if it makes others uncomfortable. You've learned that love without respect is just a slow form of self-destruction, and you no longer accept love that makes you doubt your worth. You stopped choosing people who never really chose you. And that change, that silent decision not to settle for less, is rewriting your entire story. Now you walk in peace, not on broken glass. You don't slam doors. You don't make scenes. You simply leave. Because what you're building inside of you doesn't need an audience, it only needs space. And you created that space by removing everyone who blurred your clarity. They can't reach you anymore. Not really. They can try, but the version of you who read every message, answered every call, and analyzed every word no longer exists. You've outgrown the cycle. And growth can be lonely, but it's never empty. You fill that new space with truth, with silence, with bonds that don't require you to betray yourself just to be loved. You no longer fear being alone, because now your own company is enough. Your strength doesn't look like the movies. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It shows up in the mornings when you no longer wake up anxious, in conversations where you no longer walk on eggshells, in relationships that don't ask you to abandon yourself. You owe no one the broken version of you that they once loved. You owe them no second chances to drag you back into a cycle that nearly destroyed you. What you do owe is yourself. To protect your peace, to honor your growth, to never return to what almost killed you. They thought your silence was temporary, that you were just acting. But now they're beginning to understand this isn't a pause, it's a permanent transformation. You didn't just leave, you detached, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And when that happens, there's no script they can follow. You used to explain your boundaries as if they were negotiable, as if you just said them gently enough, they would understand. But now you simply set them, with calm, with certainty, without hesitation. And if someone can't accept that, they no longer deserve to be close to you. This version of you does not fight to be chosen. You know your worth. You know what you deserve. You no longer wait for someone to wake up one day and treat you right. You leave, in silence, with determination, in peace, because you've already wasted enough time waiting for people to change. Now they notice you no longer respond. That no matter how many times they provoke you, reopen old wounds, or bring up the past, you remain silent. And that silence cuts deeper than 1,000 words, because it means they lost control. Now you have it, and the moment you took it back, everything changed. Silence cannot be manipulated. It cannot be twisted into something it's not. And when you stop responding, they are left alone, with themselves. And the truth is, they never had power. You gave it to them. That truth hurts. But it also sets you free. You no longer apologize for protecting your energy. You no longer feel guilty for saying no, for leaving, for not explaining yourself. You no longer carry the burden of choosing your peace over someone else's chaos. That change cost you, people, but it saved you. Now only one version of you remains, the one aligned with peace. Not the one who wanted to please, not the one who stayed out of fear, but the one who chose healing. The one who realized that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors that lock from the inside. And when you closed that door, they knocked louder, got angry, desperate. But not because they loved you, because they lost access to you. You were never their home. You were their source of energy. And now they're in the dark, trying to control something that no longer exists. There is strength in leaving, but the real power is in not looking back. You didn't close the door to be chased. You closed it because your peace is non-negotiable, and now they know it. They feel it in your absence, in the fact that you don't ask, don't beg, don't check up on them. You moved on, without warning, and that is what haunts them. Not your anger, not your pain, but your indifference. Your silence says, "I've said everything I needed to say," and they replay every moment, searching for a door that no longer exists. But you broke the cycle. The story ends with you, because the person they lost no longer exists. You didn't heal to become who you used to be. You healed to become who you were always meant to be. And this new version of you, they will never reach again.